Just imagine being sacked by a charity you founded, something you're passionate about, helping the homeless and those disadvantaged, because of comments you made about Black Lives Matter. Talk about cancel culture. Well, that's what happened to my guest tonight on Rich Politics. It's Nick Buckley MBE, and he joins me now live on Rich Politics. A charity that he founded and was later sacked by for comments he made about Black Lives Matter. And also somebody who was awarded an MBE for his work with this particular charity called the Mancunian Way. He was sacked for those comments that he made about Black Lives Matter on a blog, and he fought against it through public pressure and because of legal action, reinstated once again to his job. And he joins me now, Nick Buckley. Nick, thank you for coming on Rich Politics.
You're welcome, and thank you for the invite.
There's no problem. Nick, just tell us a little bit about the charity that you founded, Mancunian Way. I know that you've done a tremendous amount of work, work with the council before that, and you set up this charity with your own money. Is that right?
Yes. So I spent a decade working for Manchester Council, looking at reducing crime, antisocial behaviour, and specialising working with young people, stopping them going down the path we can guess they're going to go down because of certain matters and influences in their lives. So I did that for 10 years, won awards, and was recognised nationally for the work I did. And then in 2011, we had austerity that hit the local council. They had huge cuts to make. Wasn't their fault, so they made my team redundant. I took the money that was on the table and decided to set a charity up using that money to carry on the work that I've been pioneering, all about early intervention. So stop letting young people ruin their lives at an early age. Let's get in there early. Let's show them the great opportunities this country has on offer. And let's help them be successful, because that will then help the whole of society.
Yeah, going back to that, because that's quite extraordinary. I know you just brush over it as if, well, I took my redundancy money and I just used it to set up a charity to help. Now, not everybody thinks like that. They think of their own selves in the first instance. You get made redundant from a job, you've got to think about your own future. But there you are thinking about young people, thinking about disadvantaged backgrounds, thinking, how can I use this money to carry on the work I've been doing with the council? That's commendable in the first instance, because I was a recipient of help like that myself when I was a teenager, and I know the difference it made in my life. Going back then to university and everything else. I mean, what inspired you to want to take that redundancy money, as much as it was or wasn't, and to use it to continue the work you did with young people?
I've not always been like this. So the first 30 years of my life, I was a taker. I took out the system, I took from society, I took from community. I never gave back. I bent over backwards not to pay tax if I could help it. I was not a good citizen. I wasn't a bad citizen. I didn't go out my way to harm people. I was always a taker. And that decade I worked for Manchester Council in my 30s, I saw people who committed their lives to help society, to help people, to keep our communities up and running. A lot of it was done poorly because, hey, the council was doing it, but the people still was trying to help. And that changed my outlook on life. So then I spent a decade doing that. And by the time redundancy came around, I was a different person. And financially, I was okay. I didn't have a mortgage anymore. And I wanted to carry on with that fight and helping people. So it really wasn't a choice, because the only option was to stay at the council and do a job I didn't want to do and leave in 6 months' time depressed. So there wasn't a choice.
Yeah, and I think you need to be commended for what you've done, the work that Mancunian Way Charity has done. But of course, we're here today to talk about more recent news, because as of June, you really hit national attention, didn't you? Let's be honest, over some comments that you made, this charity we've been talking about. That I know you've been on so many media outlets. I know that you were with our friends at Unlocked. You've been on Spiked. You've done all the mainstream media. This has really come to the fore for you now, hasn't it?
Absolutely. So the comments I made was not as the founder of a charity. The charity does not have any political opinions whatsoever, because charities don't. I wrote a blog under my personal name on my personal LinkedIn channel. And it was from me as a person, from Nick Buckley. And I criticised Black Lives Matter, about their Marxist links, about the crazy ideas they want, defund the police, overthrow capitalism, blah, 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 blah. We've heard it all before.
So Nick, this criticism, this was stuff that they published on their website that they said that they believed in and stood for. Is that correct?
Yes, the only information I quoted was off their website. These weren't myths. These weren't conspiracy theories. This is what Black Lives Matter said about themselves on their .com website. As simple as that.
I notice your phone's going there.
Sorry,
let's hope it's Boris asking for advice on Brexit, but it might not be. Yeah, so those comments you made in that blog. So what happened? Because when you wrote that blog then, I think you went out on Twitter, which I know you use a lot of, and all of our viewers need to go across and follow you, by the way. But it really went viral, didn't it? And you really got attacked, didn't you?
It went crazy on Twitter. Somebody copied the link off LinkedIn and put it on Twitter. And then the Twitterati decided they were going to go for me. So they set up a campaign to have me fired. That got 450 signatures. Some people emailed into the board to explain that your chair and founder is a Nazi. And it went from there. The board panicked. They weren't up for a fight. And they decided, quite cowardly, to sack me over email. And it was as simple as that.
And these are members of the board, people you've worked with for many, many years. Friends, no doubt, that you developed this charity with over many years, and you trusted them.
I appointed them. So, they've been friends ranging from 6 years to 15 years. No way in a million years did I think this was going to happen to me.
I was going to say, what did it feel like to get that email from your board, a charity that is close to your heart, that you pioneered? It's your baby, really, and you've seen wonderful successes, won loads of awards for it. For them to turn around then and take this action by email, you must have been gutted.
I was embarrassed more than anything. The first week was I was feeling sorry for myself. What have I done? What's my big mouth gotten me into this time? Maybe I have crossed the line. Look at the backlash. And after about 7 days, I heard a little voice inside saying, don't take this lying down. You've done nothing wrong. And that's when I mounted a fight back. And in hindsight, looking back now, it was appalling what happened. I was lucky, and I got a lot of luck to fight back and to be reinstated. But for every person like me, there's hundreds of people who go under the radar, no one ever hears about, and have had their lives destroyed for saying something that was perfectly acceptable to say a week before.
Well, let's be honest, you defeated political correctness and cancel culture, one of the very few to do it, might I say. And I know you're a great advocate for the Free Speech Union, and I know some of the people involved now as well. Some wonderful organisation. Tell us a little bit about that fight, because, of course, for many people watching today, they may have said things or want to say things, but been too afraid to say it, or they've been cancelled over thoughts they've had or things that they've written. I mean, some people wouldn't fight back. They would just go, do you know what? I'm just going to go quiet. I'm not going to make a big fuss of it. Let sleeping dogs lie and get on with my life and have nothing. What made you want to fight back, Nick?
I've given this quite a lot of thought this last couple of months, because I'm writing a book, and one of the chapters of the book is called The Resurrection, which is about my personal resurrection from being cancelled. And there isn't one thing to put it on. So I think it's basically me and my experiences. So having to overcome a stutter when I was a child, I stuttered for 13 years, bullied, people taking the mickey, the anxiety of knowing you have to speak, but you're going to go, it's horrendous.
Yeah, of course,
but it builds character, resilience. I came from a tough council estate. I've had a gun pointed in my face. I've got 19 stitches in my head where I was attacked by 8 lads with iron bars. And when I look at my experiences and what I've had to overcome, and I'm not saying, oh, look at my poor upbringing, oh, woe me, not at all. But when you compare what I've overcome to a few nasty people on Twitter calling me a Nazi, it's laughable. But at the time, it wasn't laughable. At the time, it felt like the whole world was against me. But then when I heard from my conscience telling me to get up and fight back and don't take this lying down, because I've told thousands of young people, don't be a victim. Bad things happen to good people, and life is unfair, and don't think life will ever be fair to you, because it won't. So stand up, brush yourself down and carry on, because that's what a man does. Carry on and fight back. And I took my own advice. And surprisingly, they were all easy to beat.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed when you were interviewed by Peter Whittle, I watched the interview, obviously, just to get some background to speaking to you today. And on there, that was one of the things that he asked you a question about, where was the support? And you felt you didn't have any support, but you had your conscience. That's what you relied. My conscience said, I have to do something about this. Now, you got in touch with the Free Speech Union. And what happened then? Did a legal battle begin from there? What happened with the board? How were you reinstated, Nick?
So the first step was Tony Young. I can't remember his name. Toby Young phoned me up and spent an hour and a half talking to me, which just enabled me to get it all off my chest. Because up to that point, everything was kept inside. Didn't want to talk about it to anybody else. I was embarrassed, and talking to him really helped me frame what I was going to do next. So big thank you to Toby. And then another online petition was created by a former trustee to have me reinstated. That got 18,000 signatures compared to 450 to have me fired. And then I began to see a way back. The Free Speech Union then managed to get a pro bono solicitor involved. Fantastic. He looked at all my paperwork and my contracts and what I said and what they did. And within a couple of hours, he said, this is a clear breach of contract. So he wrote to the board, explained to them where they went wrong, and told them I intended to sue them all personally. And within 18 hours, they all resigned.
Wow. I mean, that's just powerful. I mean, one of the things that I take from your story, Nick, is it gives other people hope as well, that, if they experience the same kind of thing in different measures, not get the same press coverage as you've certainly had over it, but in a much smaller way, that it is worth fighting back for, that, we can't be cancelled for things that we say. And I note the remarks that you made. They were not racist. They weren't fascist. They were just things that were already on the Black Lives Matter's website about themselves. And you were just looking at them as a whole because you'd heard, let's be honest, I'd never heard of Black Lives Matter. I'm in Wales. Up until this whole political thing kicked off, I'd never heard of them. I find out more recently now they've registered as a political party. So that even adds more pressure to the understanding of a lot of people that actually this is a political movement. It's not just about anti-racism. They are a political movement, and some of their key cornerstone things about defunding the police and overthrowing capitalism and all those other issues, like a Marxist organization, they are upfront about it. And for an individual not to have the right to speak out against that, I find extraordinary, given the fact that we live in a free society where free speech and democracy, we promote so much around the world, and we've exported it around the world. And yet, I find you're the only person I can think of that I've ever spoken to who's been able to overcome that and get reinstated and put back into a job that realistically, I mean, you're not just passionate about, that you started and founded yourself. It's extraordinary, isn't it?
It is. I think the message I would give people is, if they've taken everything from you, what else have you got to lose? So if you're backed into a corner, they've taken your job, they've taken your livelihood, they've taken your reputation, what have you got to lose? You may not be successful, you may not get your job back, but at least you can cause them a whole lot of issues. At least you can raise their hypocrisy. At least you can make sure that they'll think twice before they attack somebody else. You have a duty to fight back, because if they've taken everything, you're a dangerous person because you've got nothing else to be afraid of.
Well, do you know, talking to you, Nick, has given me the boldness to say what I'm about to say now as well. I don't know if I should say it or not, but I'm going to say it anyway. The movement Black Lives Matter, we know the Premiership Football Club have seen all across this kick out racism campaign, which I agree with. We should kick out racism in any form. It shouldn't be in not just in sport, in society. We're against it. It's an evil. It's a scar on our society. We don't want it. We all agree with that. But the Black Lives movement, or Black Lives Matter movement, has been promoted by the Premiership, by the PFA, and yet on their website, they are. It's very clear. It's a written part of their policies that they shouldn't show any political support for any political parties or organizations. That's written in their constitution, in their policy. Yet they've adopted this Black Lives Matter movement, as you like, and taken it a step further, where all the players in every single game now bow their knee. Up until recently, it's gone along fine. Now fans are back in stadiums, and as we know, Millwall Football Club fans just this last week have been shouting and screaming at them, booing them, saying, why are you taking the knee? What do you think about that? Do you think those fans were right? Because I don't believe that they were racist fans. They weren't against, black people standing up for their rights. They were against the political movement of BLM. What do you think about that, Nick?
I think it was the right of Millwall fans to boo, because Black Lives Matter is a racist organisation. So in fact, Millwall fans are actually the anti-racist because they were booing a racist organisation. So the individuals on the field with their knee in mud are not racist and they're not Marxist. They're idiots because they've done no research themselves. They're all multimillionaires. They're all big believers in capitalism because that's why they're multimillionaires. And if the Marxists ever did gain control over the UK, their jobs have all gone day one. They all go down to £150 a week. And none of them want that. It's the church of woke.
Yeah.
It's a way of virtue signal that, look at me, I'm a fantastic person. I'm fighting for rights of minorities and the underprivileged. There's no underprivileged people on those playing fields. They're all extremely privileged. And yet they're quoting and telling us that this is a racist country when 3% of the population in this country are black and 30% of all professional football players are black. Well, I don't see any racism there. This is all a feel-good, virtue signalling fashion craze. And what Millwall fans did the other day in booing is they have now put the final nail in the coffin of Black Lives Matter in the UK. It's all over now. It's all gone.
I absolutely agree with you. And I think we're going to see it more and more. As fans start returning back to games, we're going to see it because, let's be honest, we all know what Black Lives Matter stands for. We're not anti-racist. We're not against movements that call out racism. We support that. It's the politicization of these movements that we're more concerned about. And Nick, our time is almost up. And I want to ask you a couple of things before we go. Your book. Now, tell us a little bit, because you're writing a book at the moment. Tell us what it's going to be called, if you have a working title. Can I get the exclusive here? Or what's it about, Nick?
The working title at the moment is Lessons in Cowardice. So I started the book after I got fired, partly for something to do because I was unemployed, and partly because I found it cathartic to start talking about what happened to me and to help me understand it. The more I wrote, the more I read what I wrote, the more I thought about what I wanted to write. One word kept popping up, and the word was cowardice. I was fired because of cowardice. No one came to my defence because of cowardice. We've allowed Black Lives Matter to march on the streets and riot in London because of cowardice. So the book is about me exploring different topics around the word cowardice. So it starts off about me being fired, about the work I do for the charity, about fatherless homes, about, employment, and the reason why people don't choose these paths is cowardice. And at the end, I talk about an antidote to cowardice, which is courage. And I write 12 steps on how you can improve and how you can start a courage training regime, baby steps. And the first step, and I advise everybody to take this first tip, is to start using the word no. Simple word, no explanation, don't explain yourself. I want you to retweet this tweet. No. I'm your boss. I want you to read this book called White Privilege. No. I want you to shout Black Lives Matter and put a poster in your window. No. That's how you start to build courage, by that one simple word.
Well, Nick, if there's one word that can sum up your journey so far, it would be courage. And that's a great place to leave the interview. I'm looking forward to receiving a copy of that book. I'll, of course, purchase it first when it's out. Nick, if people want to follow you on social media, how do they connect with you?
On all social media, search for me at Nick Buckley MBE, all one word.
Fantastic. Nick, thank you ever so much for joining us on Rich Politics. And to all of our viewers here today, just remember, have some courage. Don't be afraid to say what you think or write down what you think, as Nick certainly did. Don't let this woke left agenda, these politicians who somehow think you don't have the right to say what you believe, to tell you what to say and how to say it. So you heard it here first with Nick Buckley here on Rich Politics. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to tune in next week, same time, Rich Politics.